Card games have some very diverse gameplay. With hundreds of cards to choose from, you can be confident that every match will play out differently. Roguelikes also have some very diverse gameplay. They'll throw a unique set of encounters at you on every playthrough, keeping you on your toes. By fusing these genres, Slay the Spire has brought gameplay variety to a whole new level. But fusing genres is harder than it may seem. When done haphazardly, you can end up getting the flaws of both genres instead of the benefits. Slay the Spire solved this problem by carefully picking and choosing which elements of card games and which elements of roguelikes they wanted to keep. So in this video we're going to look at 3 key design decisions that keep Slay the Spire fresh and exciting. Let's get started. Ever since Magic the Gathering hit the scene 25 years ago, collectible card games have been everywhere. Between Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon cards, Hearthstone, Duelist, Faeria, Gwent and many others, it feels like everyone and their dog has a card collection. But these games all share a common problem. Their original promise was that everyone could create and play with their own decks. Different players would have access to different cards, letting them build a deck that's unique to them and that represents their personality. But there's a catch. Most popular card games let you pre-construct your entire deck and then pit you against other human players. When you place customizable decks in this kind of direct competition, some combinations of cards will quickly and inevitably rise to the top. The same combinatorial explosion that gives players so much freedom also makes perfect balance impossible. There's something like 2,000 cards in Magic's standard format right now. Between them, there's millions of different combinations, and there's simply no way to make them all equally powerful. Now, when you're playing friendlies, this isn't such a big deal. You can just play with decks that are roughly equally strong, since there's no need to be a tryhard. But nowadays, most card games are played online. You have no idea what you'll go up against, and they'll even rank your performance on a ladder. This puts a lot of emphasis on winning, driving people towards using whichever decks are strongest. As more and more players start using the strongest decks, it becomes less and less likely that you'll be able to keep up without copying them. It's an arms race. This is the metagame problem. Customizable player versus player games incentivize players to pick strong decks over creative decks. For a genre built on the premise of creative deck building, this problem is a big deal. Card games have come up with all sorts of solutions to this over the years, with varying levels of success. But Slay the Spire manages to sidestep the problem entirely with a subtle change in genre. Number 1, it's single player. Instead of dueling against another human, your goal is to climb a tower filled with computer-controlled enemies. These CPU enemies follow simple, understandable rules, and they don't learn your strategies or adapt to them. This lets you focus on playing the game itself rather than playing the metagame surrounding it. Number 2, it's a deck builder. Instead of pre-constructing your entire deck, you start with a small starter deck, and you add 1 card to it every time you win a battle. This puts the focus on adaptation, encouraging you to pick the cards that suit your run, rather than the cards at the top of a meta. Slay the Spire didn't invent deck building, that was actually Dominion back in 2008, but they do make good use of it. Together, these features give you much more freedom to play the cards you like to play over the cards that are topping a tier list. That's why single-player deck building is the first big way they keep the game varied. Single-player games have an Achilles heel. They tend to be quickly consumed. Most of the time, people will play through a game's story mode, or part of it, and then move on to something else. To make these games last longer, most major studios pack them with lots of varied content. But making all this content is both time-consuming and expensive. By contrast, some multiplayer games can be played for hundreds of hours without getting stale. This is because human opponents are intelligent. Their strategies constantly evolve, which makes the game constantly evolve. But all hope is not lost. Some single-player games avoid this problem with clever design. The roguelike genre in particular is famous for creating lots of varied gameplay out of a small set of content, and they do this using a pretty simple idea. You randomize a chain of encounters and rewards so that every playthrough is different. Each individual encounter or reward might not be very unique, but once you've been through a sequence of 50 of them, your final position will be something very unique to this playthrough. Of course, this all hinges on how well you can randomize your content, but Slay the Spire does this really well. Here's 3 key ways the game is randomized. Your goal is always the same. You need to reach the top of the spire and defeat the final boss. But the road to get there is never quite the same twice. Do I head past the elite and gain an extra relic? Or do I head past the shop and spend some of my money? Decisions like these are commonplace as you navigate your route through the spire. Being a deck builder makes it very easy for Slay the Spire to randomize the cards you have access to. You'll always start with a core deck of 10 simple cards, but every time you defeat an enemy you can choose one of 3 cards to add to your deck. This lets you gradually pull together something, and it lets you adapt your strategy over time. The dungeon and the card pool form the outline of a Slay the Spire run, but relics are the secret spices that will draw your run's flavour in exciting directions. You'll pick up a random relic every time you fight an elite enemy or a boss, and most of them give you a small, helpful boost, like the Orichalcum, which gives you extra block, or the Strawberry, which raises your max HP. But some relics will turn your whole strategy upside down and encourage you to pick up cards you'd normally never consider. The Runic Pyramid stops you from discarding your hand at the end of your turn, pushing you to build a deck full of low-cost combo cards. And the Ice Cream lets you conserve energy between your turns, pushing you to build a deck of powerful high-cost cards. By taking lots of these small randomizations and chaining them, Slay the Spire can pull its card battles in a wide variety of directions. This is why leaning on the randomized encounters and rewards of the roguelike genre is the second big way they keep the game varied. Varying the encounters within a run is cool, but varying the runs themselves is even cooler. First off is the Daily Climb, a special run which comes with 3 modifiers that change once per day. Each of these modifiers can drastically change how a run plays out. For example, the Diverse modifier lets you choose cards from any class in the game, whereas the Binary modifier means that you'll have fewer cards to choose from at the end of each battle. By combining 3 of these modifiers, they can create some unusual playthroughs. Then there's Ascension mode, a clever way of implementing difficulty scaling. Every time you complete the game, you'll unlock the next Ascension level. Each level adds a new condition to the game, like elite enemies are more common, or you heal less health after fighting a boss. Modifiers like these are a lot more exciting than just scaling up the enemy's stats like most games do. They force you to modify your strategy, rather than just forcing you to make fewer mistakes. This is why the match modifiers are the third big way they keep the game varied. Altogether, Slay the Spire has 3 pillars of variation. The card battles form a foundation, the roguelike progression pulls these battles in unique directions, and the modifiers pull entire matches in unique directions. In retrospect, Slay the Spire's innovations might seem obvious. It's easy to say that they just took 2 popular genres and mashed them together. And to be fair, they did do this. But genres are harder to mix than they might seem. A genre is essentially a tried and tested formula for creating a game, and most of them went through decades of trial and error before reaching their modern forms. Slay the Spire succeeded because card games and roguelikes are actually both based on the same principle. Variation creates replayability. Cards can provide short-term variety. Your hand affects what you can do right now on this turn, but each duel is disconnected with no real impact on any other duels, and the double-blind choice of picking a deck pushes people into a rigid metagame. Roguelikes provide long-term variety. They let you gradually accumulate unique resources as you progress down your run. but their core gameplay is often repetitive. Most traditional roguelikes use RPG-style grinding to pad things out, and most modern ones use fast-paced action. Variation is a good thing for virtually any game, which makes both of these genres quite easy to transplant. They also each cover the other's major weaknesses, which is why fusing them both into one game was so genius. So, to wrap things up, what can we learn from Slay the Spire's design? My personal major takeaways were: number 1, does your game have short-term monotony? If so, adding cards might help you out. The customization in choosing your deck and the randomization in drawing your hand can push each individual turn in a unique direction. Number 2, does your game have long-term monotony? If so, adding roguelike style progression might help you out. The gradual accumulation of unique battles and rewards pushes each match as a whole in a unique direction, and match modifiers can elevate this idea even further. There's so much we can learn from Slay the Spire, and I only have time to scratch the surface in this video. If you feel like I missed something, please let me know in the comment section. And if you want to see more game design videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe. Progress on Patch Quest, my own game, is still going strong, and I'll have more to announce in the future. In the meantime, you can get up-to-date news by following @PatchQuest on Twitter. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.